I have dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability, and I have difficulty with remembering how numbers work, and my brain gets lost in the steps of a process. Because they found out when I was young that I had a learning disability. When I was in kindergarten, my teacher noticed I was really struggling in the classroom. I just always had to learn how to do things maybe a little bit differently. And I had to take some of those accommodations whenever I was in college, even though they came with stigma. I had to take the support of having extra time on test, having tutoring, advocating for myself with professors.
Thoughts are racing, spinning fast, ideas flow, but never.
In today's episode, we're talking about the hidden stress of living with a learning disability, simple daily grounding habits, shifting from competition to community, and redefining personal success.
Rambling on, no straight lines. Welcome to my busy mind.
Hello and welcome to Ramblings of a Busy Mind. In this episode, I have Michelle, and I've done it again. Your last name.
Steiner.
Steiner. I should read. If I could read, that would be easier. With me, who is a writer, speaker, photographer. No, photographer. That's the German brain.
Okay.
And a paraeducator, which was so funny because I put that in the paranormal. But for the Canadian, it's a teacher's assistant. So it's so funny when you talk to people in different countries, different areas of life, different languages. Certain things you think are easy become something totally different when you put the context wrong. So yes, me again. Welcome, Michelle. Sorry for the rambling. It's been a busy day. I've been running left and right and up and down. So I might be a little bit scrambled today, but I'm happy to have you. And if you would like to share anything else than what I just scrambled, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the introduction. That is great. Yes, well, I am Michelle Steiner. I live in Pennsylvania in the States with my husband Ron, our two cats, Jack and Sparrow. And I am the writer, speaker, photographer, and the teacher's aide. I did like the part about the paranormal one because sometimes it feels like you are walking in the paranormal when there's a full moon and working at a school. But I have a blog called Michelle's Mission where I write about my life with a learning disability, and I get to feature my photography and my writing and my advocacy work as well.
So Jack Sparrow, you're a
Yes.
paradox. I had to read. You said you had a learning disability. Want
Yes.
to elaborate on that?
Sure. I have dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability, and I have difficulty with remembering how numbers work, and my brain gets lost in the steps of a process. I'm not able to read the face of a clock, and I confuse my right from my left. I also have visual perception issues, and that prevents me from driving, but it's in my brain, not in my eyes. And I have limited hand dexterity in both of my hands, so it can be difficult for me to do things like unlock doors, and my fine motor skills are affected as well.
It's interesting that you say that with the visual impairment, because I sometimes have the challenges being trained in sound. If there's too much sound, I cannot process. So I hear this blah, 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 blah coming in, but I have no clue what's it because I cannot process in certain circumstances the information that comes in.
Right, and that is definitely can be sometimes an auditory processing disorder or other kinds just with that hearing and just how you
Overwhelm.
sometimes brain process information. I think sometimes we have this one idea of what a learning disability is, and it's really a lot of different ways that can affect somebody.
Yeah, being trained in there in Touch for Health, we also learned, or I got to learn that you can be inhibited energetically in one side, but not on the other side. So when you teach, it's brain gym work basically. And I don't know if you know brain gym, but it's very interesting because you can have difficulties comprehending what's happening on this side while you're completely fine on that side.
Yep, exactly.
And your teacher moves
Yep,
from left to right, and you only get half of what they're saying or showing.
true.
How how do you cope with something like that?
I have for me it's been a lifetime of that because they found out when I was young that I had a learning disability. When I was in kindergarten, my teacher noticed I was really struggling in the classroom, and I had to repeat the grade, and I began to receive specialty instruction the following year and disability accommodations for that. When I was in school, the accommodations were having the test read aloud, extra time on the test, putting me in front of the class because I also, my ears were clogged
Mhm.
and I had tubes in my ears and I couldn't hear things very well. So I had to be put in the front of the classroom and I had speech therapy. I just have always had to learn how to do things maybe a little bit differently. And I had to take some of those accommodations whenever I was in college, even though they came with stigma. I had to take the support of having extra time on test, having tutoring, advocating for myself with professors. And sometimes that caused a lot of burnout too, because a lot of people were telling me that I couldn't go to college or I couldn't go past community college or I couldn't have the job that I wanted. So sometimes that was hard. But as an adult, I find it easier in some respects because I can make those decisions on what I feel is best for me. For example, I can't tell time on the analog clock, so I use a digital clock or I have a Fitbit. I also I cannot open up a can opener. So what I'll end up on a manual one. So I use an electric can opener and it's looking for those little ways in my life to be able to do that. And another great example is I can't drive because of my disability. So I made sure that we got a house that's close to things where I can walk or take the bus or and have that support system. But it's just learning taking that problem that's coming up in my life and how to handle that and just being able to manage it.
Do you have kids?
No kids, two
No
cats,
kids.
as I said.
Do
Yep,
cats. Yeah, I was just wondering because when you grow up, how often do we have parents that grow up with something like that and it's n n not like they're not able to cope. How do the kids cope with it? Right?
right.
How do they get their support when their parents didn't get support? And I found when I grew up, when I look back at my life and me in school growing up, I don't remember that we had anybody in school that had disabilities
Mhm.
in that cause. Like there might be dyslexia, but it was never really supported in a big way. And I mean, I'm 55, so that's and growing up in Germany. But what I found here in the last 20 years, when I saw my friends' kids grow up in school, and there were some that had
Mhm.
visual trouble. I say it this way because I cannot get
Okay.
through that. And and others movement. But they all got support. They all have somebody who's with them, who's supporting. And that's what I find in Canada is really great that the kids get so much help. They can go to
Right.
normal school. They don't have to be separated and distanced and no, they're integrated. And that's a great part to see that this time. Like I don't again, if I look back in my school, you wouldn't see a blind kid. You wouldn't see a kid with visual impairment. You
Mhm.
would see maybe movement, yes, if the school was made for that, because most of them
Mhm.
didn't have a ramp and we had stairs. We had to go up and down stairs all the time. But yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot of improvement as even in here in the States as well. I can remember when I went to school, that was a really good, that was the time whenever some of that legislation was just passed. And that gave me that right to go to be able to go to school and to be included because, like you said, when my parents went to school, they didn't, there wasn't a lot of students that had disabilities, or the ones that did have disabilities were not being accommodated in classes. So this was really hard for them whenever their daughter is getting diagnosed with having a disability and wondering, well, what is the rest of her education, her life is going to be like. So I've definitely seen a lot of improvement, but there is still a lot of work that definitely does need to be done to make that a place where all the students can thrive and be included as well.
Hmm. So when you're teachers, what grade do you work with, like as a teacher's assistant?
I worked with seventh graders last year, and I really love that age because a lot of times it's like curing myself at that time. I hate my disability. I wish I didn't have it. And now I get to be that voice that comes in and says, "You are smart. You can do this." And I can show them how to advocate. I cannot help them with their math, and all the kids know that, but I think that that also really shows too that everybody has something that they struggle with. Everybody has something they're not good at, and it's admitting that and really that gives them that example too that okay, everybody struggles.
The best motivation I ever got from a fitness trainer was somebody who was heavier than I was,
Hmm.
because she
Right.
knew what was going on. She knew what you were living through. So having a teacher's assistant who had their own trouble or has their own trouble is actually a great part, right?
Yep,
Do you have,
exactly.
uh, is there certain kinds of disabilities you work with? As your strength is not math, but do you have a specialty, or I don't know how that works. Like, I have no kids, so I cannot tell.
Right. I have had a number of different roles. I've worked one-on-one with with students with visual impairments, and that gave me a different perspective and different things to work with. I also, right now, I work with, I do itinerant support. So I go into different classrooms with students, not math, but we'll go into history and science, which sometimes has some math in it, but the teachers are pretty good about that. English, and then sometimes some learning strategy classes that are like a resource room. And I get students that have all kinds of disabilities that will come in and they are in the general ed curriculum. They just need to have that support. So I might get students that have autism. I might get ones that might have some physical disabilities that come in. I have students that also have learning disabilities. Some of them have them with reading, other ones have them with the math. We might get students that come in and they might still might have some hearing or they might be visually impaired as well. Some students don't have a disability, but they do have a condition or they have something that they don't need an individualized plan, but what they need is some support. So we have what we call 504 plans, and that can include a student who has diabetes. It can include a student that has seizures. And it's just knowing what that student needs. But I think sometimes the students that I generally work really well with are my students that might have autism and they can benefit from being, I mean, they're definitely in the classroom, but they still were a little lost on how to maybe, oh, how do I fit in with this situation?
Mm.
So I might get some kids that just don't quite get how to handle that. So I can go in and when they're struggling socially, because I know what that felt like to be isolated, and I can kind of give them some advice if they're being bullied. I can be like, well, no, that isn't right, but you have a choice whether you want to report that. But maybe we'll try some other soft strategies. Like I had a student before that somebody wasn't letting her sit at the lunch table with them.
Mm.
So I said, well, we can go and report that, but I think maybe what you should do is find a different table to sit at. And if they ask you, just say, hey, I'm just trying out some different tables. And that we went to talk to the principal, and that was the exact same strategy that she gave too. Some of those just real subtle cues on how we handle situations, because there's always going to be somebody in your life that's going to maybe get on your nerves a little bit. So we have to learn how do we handle that and work in a situation with people that just might get under your skin.
I love that support factor in there. Like, part of what I'm doing and part of my tendency is to, for my PhD, is the supportive community, and why we need it. And I find a lot of times we have been trained so much focused on competition and not
Mhm.
collaboration or inclusiveness, that it's kind of lost, like almost a lost art. Like, yes, everybody talks about inclusiveness today, while at the same time kids have to compete with each other for places and numbers and whatever. And if you don't install that in the kids early on, if they don't know how to support each other, even so you might be a competitor, yes. But if you learn early on that being competitive with somebody else doesn't mean to be disrespectful or keeping them out, that you can be friends, even so, or at least respectful with each other, even so you're competing with each other. Um, if they don't learn those basics, when will they learn it?
Exactly. Yep. They have to learn them at that age. And we have to learn, I think some of that, the greatest thing I had to learn too in my life was being happy for somebody else when somebody else got what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I could look back on a lot of those years in my life where you had to go and say congratulations and learn how to do that. And it made it even better because my time came when I had that success. And I always felt better when people would say congratulations or I'm so happy for you. And it's learning how to handle those things. Not everything we're going to go after, we're going to win at. Sometimes we're going to fail at something. But it's what did we learn from that? And are we trying again? I think is really the big thing with that.
Yeah, and also when we all come together as a community,
Hmm.
nobody gets lost, right? That's one.
Yep, exactly.
Nobody really is last, even so numbers might be different, but as a community, you grow as a community, you come up as a community,
Hmm.
and still you can be an individual in the community, but for the most part, the caring of load and the caring
Hmm.
of for each other is totally different than when you're like the one who has to run by themselves, like kamikaze fighter or whatever that single person that's out there fighting it.
Right. Exactly.
Interesting topic. I didn't expect that to come out today.
Agreed.
You use an app as support. You said in your in the questionnaire, you said the Calm
Hmm.
app. What is it? What is it about?
The Calm app is one of those things that it's an app that you can use where they have like meditations if you need to calm down, like with breathing. It also has like sleep stories. And there's also different ones too that you might use. There's soothing music, a calm radio. I mean, there's a lot of different things that sometimes can really be helpful if it's really stressful and you just need to like calm your mind for a few minutes. I think that always helps out too.
True, true. I have a playlist on my Spotify that I use, and
Hmm.
I tend to go to classical music for the most part when I
Hmm.
need to calm down. And when I need to focus, it might be classical, but it might be also very heavy EDMs
Hmm.
because sometimes I just need that beat and fast and boom boom keep me going. Um, I use Finch to keep me on track because I tend to forget things and I kept forgetting the app. That's the other part. But it has
Right.
like you set up your daily schedule, you set up what you want to achieve in the day, and then you follow Finch and feed the bird. Um, and not that I say you have to get Finch or Calm or whatever. We're not endorsing any apps here, but there's some really cool tools outside now that can help you, like be that on the phone. And unfortunately, we're all on the phone all the time, which reminds me, mine is not on quiet. Um, but on the other hand, we have so much distraction at the same time, right? With the phones and whatever there is. How do you cope with that?
That is sometimes just you have to turn that off if that is, or set some limits on what you do. Like if I am on my phone or I do, like I can remember I was at the Y or at the gym and I love to listen to audiobooks and I love to do that when I'm there. And I had someone that looked at me and she goes, "Do you like screen time? Are you doing too much with screen time?" And I said, "Well, this is a book." And sometimes it's taking that time out and just saying, all right, maybe I am going to use my device, but I'm using it to listen to a book, or I'm using it to listen to a podcast, or
Mhm.
I'm using it with my Fitbit to see on that app where I'm at, where my goals are. And then maybe it's just not looking at social media too. It's just taking that time out to maybe just try to disconnect, maybe not cold turkey, but in a way, you are taking that time for you to do something that you love to do.
I listen to music. I have, as I said, I have
Mhm.
Spotify on my phone and use the playlist for my moods.
Yeah.
And I'm also an avid audiobook listener because
Yep.
oftentimes I don't have the time or the peace of mind to sit down and read a book. Because
Hmm.
often then when I'm really stressed, I fall asleep while I read the book, which doesn't help. So I run audiobooks while I do the dishes, while I'll clean, whatever. For me, that's never a distraction. It's actually supporting because I can do what I need to
Yes.
do and at the same time enjoy what I enjoy to do. Um,
Right.
so it makes it easier to do the tasks that are needed
Exactly.
instead of just having to go like, okay, I got to do the dishes again.
Right. And it helps you too because you're listening to your story and you're thinking, okay, I love doing I like hearing you're interested in
And
that.
when
And
it
then
gets
it
when it
gets,
gets really, really exciting, you're
yeah,
gonna
then you're scrubbing. Yeah.
yeah. Um, you say you go to the gym, so movement is for you a important part.
It
Um,
is.
what does movement do for you?
It keeps me focused because sometimes I could be sometimes distracted by things. So when I get up in the morning, I'm like, all right, this is something that I can do. I'm focused on the day. I'm focused on what's ahead of me. I also, it's one of those things that improves my mood too, because sometimes I might be in, especially if I'm burnt out, I can't always get past maybe what the problem is.
Mhm.
And this gives me some motivation that, okay, I'm going to do this. And this is one thing in my life that I can control and I'm able to handle with that. And that just makes me think, okay, I can go here. And sometimes I just crave just sometimes the feeling with that too, because if I've had a really, even if it's been a good day, but just really busy, I can just remember I was at a conference and I was like, I just want to go in the fitness center after, even though I worked out that day and I just wanted to be on the Peloton, just to be able to go and just have that feeling of just releasing and it felt really good. That always makes me, it always improves my mood when I feel that way and improves that focus and just it really gives me that encouragement.
Quick break because I gotta talk to our audience.
Okay.
As usual, if you like what you hear, if what we put out here and the stories that we tell, if that's of benefit for you or you see somebody who could use it, please share, like, and follow because you're supporting us, supporting others. And if you have somebody who can really, really benefit, just share it to them directly and ask them to listen to it because that's how I learned most of it, listening to other stories. There's lots of perspective and opportunity in them that might make a change for that person. So please like, share, and follow. Thank you. Um, quick question to the sports again, to the gym. Have you ever had the experience that when you were stuck in a problem, in a challenge? I don't like the word problem. That's why challenge.
Mhm.
Um, and you went to the gym and afterwards it was just solved. Like it was just there. The solution just popped up and you didn't have to fight it.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Sometimes I might be in I might have a problem and I think, oh, there's no solution to this, or this is really bad. And then I'll go to the gym and I'll think, oh, wait a minute. Have I ever thought about handling it from this angle? Have I thought about tackling it by doing this? Or wait a minute, did I remember that this happened, or I could do this? So I think sometimes I do think of a lot of those solutions, and that's where I think some of that focus and that clarity comes from.
Working with energy in therapeutic touch, that's one of my trainings. So it's energy
Mhm.
healing. Um, one of the things that I believe in is that we accumulate energy. So we're building up and that's leading to aggravation, but that's also if you don't find the solution right away, you're building up those blocks in you. You're building up and you're building up, and your brain is just not able, or your body,
Mhm.
or whatever you want to call it, is not able to get out of that quagmire of turbulence,
Yeah.
basically. And then all of a sudden, when you direct that energy somewhere else by movement, by walking, by whatever, that's gone. So your brain can go, oh, there's space. I can now dive into other things. Um, and I might be wrong with that, but I found a lot of times when I'm in a funk, when I'm in a mood, instead of sitting down and wallowing, I go out in the garden and do maybe not the smartest things sometimes, but I'm active. I'm trying to get like to power through something, and then all of a sudden it pops and it goes like, yeah, there it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah, it can be
I
sweet.
agree. Yeah.
Cool. If you were to talk, I mean, you had a pretty good upbringing that people took care of you, that people made sure that you
Right.
were taken care of. If you have a student in your situation or a similar situation that doesn't have that support, how can you assist them to get further? And I mean, not you doing the work, but what support systems can you hand them or directions can you point them to find support?
One of the first things that I would tell them is to find out what it is you like to do and find a way to do it, and also to look for different supports. And we do try to guide them into supports that are out there. One of the first things that our students will do when they're older is they will start to fill out a transition survey to figure out, well, what do I want to do when I'm done with school? And we talk about some of the supports out there. One of the big ones is Office for Vocational Rehabilitation. That is a federal program. And that helps students by paying for college. They pay for all the testing, and they also can help with job assistance as well. So I think that's a big thing. But I mean, to look for the programs that your government has to is a key thing, or what your ministry might have for individuals that have disabilities, I think is key. But it's also consulting with physicians, it's consulting with social workers, caseworkers that are out there, therapists, just trying to find people that can help you, to give you those tools and those resources to be out, that you can have this life that is centered around what you want to do, and to help you be able to achieve that and have the best life possible.
And do you have any resources for parents of students? Because that's the other part. It's not only the students that are stressed or that live in overwhelm with their diagnosis, or even not worse, not diagnosed, but struggling.
Right.
What can
I
parents do?
A lot of times, the biggest thing a parent can do is to work with their child's school teachers to develop the plan. I had the privilege of running into one of my first special ed teachers whenever a few years back, and I got to thank her. And she said, "Well, it was also your parents. If your mom had a concern, she would call me. And
Mm,
if I had a concern, I would call your mom.
mm.
And together we would figure out a plan that works out for you." And I see so much of that now with a lot of parents working with their child's teachers, working with occupational therapists, working with the principal, and everybody's trying to work on behalf of that child so that their child can have the best education possible. I also think when you have a child that has a disability, it's really focusing on their strengths and finding out what they love to do. For me, my dad found a story about a dinosaur that I wrote in second or third grade and said, "This is really good." And he read me a story every night when I was little, and reading and writing really became my world. And it was more on focusing on what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. And I also think that for both children, or well, back when they get older, uh, or their parents, there's also a lot of groups out there virtually that can be of support. There's a lot of parent support groups out there. And when children become older, there are a lot of programs that students can do, that they can do virtually or even in person, that they can meet other people that have maybe a similar disability or another type, and that can offer support for them as well.
So basically, don't be like it was in the older times. Have it a
Yeah,
stigmata, make it normalize it
yeah.
as much as you can, and support as much as you can, but also find
Hmm.
support for you so you can be not the one, or you're not the one who's carrying everything by themselves, right?
Exactly.
And I think the world has come quite a bit far ahead from again my youth in making normalizing,
Mhm.
not saying that it's normal, but or politically correct. I'm trying to make it inclusive, to make it
Right.
more easy to get to what you need and find the help that you need. But if you have somebody as an adult now who has never had that support, is there anything they can do? Like not
One of
as
the
a
first.
parent, but if they grew up as the child that didn't get the
Mhm.
support.
I would tell them to reach out for support and to look and seeing what your government or your ministry has, first of all, to get that ball rolling. I know in the United States, we have Office for Vocational Rehabilitation, and they can help by just assessing what, if you have a disability or what kind you have, or to make some suggestions. I definitely recommend that. I also recommend that people look for maybe online groups with support too, once they find out what they have, or just places they can talk to about other people. But I think it's also knowing what you want and understand and finding that way to get to what you want to do. Because it's, it's one of those things where there's not that one direct road to success. Everybody wants to get to that place, but you might need a different route to do that. And I think it's when you learn to seek out the supports and you realize you might have a different route from getting there, but it's finding that way to getting to that life that you want.
Yeah. It's I try to prevent in the word interesting because that's a word that I use very often, but I'm I find it really fascinating. Let's use this one.
Mhm.
How far people have come and how if you have the right support and if you have the opportunity, how far you can
Mhm.
come and you don't have to wallow and sit home and despair. You
Right.
can go out, you can be successful. And if you look at people these days, almost everybody that was so interesting. A friend of mine does talk about autism and spectrum, being on the spectrum.
Mhm.
And I always was like, yeah, I'm first of all, I don't use those words because for me, everybody is an individual, so there is no spectrum. You are you and I
Right.
am me. Um, but when we were talking, we were both presenting at a conference on that. And she was talking about that everybody's on the spectrum. It might be you are all on the spice rack. So she doesn't talk neurodiversity, she talks neurospiciness. And she says everybody's on there. You might be a little bit salty or you might be hot as hell, but the part in that is that all of us have our quirks and things that we do in a certain way. And if you are, per the definition, looking at it, you're on the spectrum, right? Because you're different than others.
Mhm.
But it was
Right.
very interesting to have that conversation with her and hear her talk because I'm like, okay, yeah, me too.
Right, because everybody does have their own little quirks, and everybody does have things that they're good at and things that they struggle with. We sometimes we'll even say this in trainings, that I've heard it said in two different ways. Somebody said, well, what is the difference between somebody that has the disability and just somebody that is doesn't really just has a struggle? And I remember somebody saying, well, it's, yeah, they have problems, or they're the same, or difficulties are the same as everybody else's. Sometimes they just might have it a little more, or they might have different things that they might struggle with, just maybe at a higher level. I also have people that will say, too, that we all have disabilities, or we all have things that we could work on, but sometimes we just don't have the room to give everybody an individualized education plan in a school. We don't have that time or that thing, because if we really want to look at it, all of us have a goal we could work on, have something that needs to be dealt with. And also, we have things that we are really good at too. And yeah, so I think I agree. We're all people. We all have things that we need to work on. We're all works in progress, but we also have a lot of goodness.
Yeah, and again, if you bring it to the part of community,
Mm-hmm.
everybody can be an individual, everybody can have their own challenges, but
Right.
in the sense of community, we all can support each other and balance them out. So there is no
Yep.
spectrum. You don't have to be on the outside of the community. You can be in the middle of it and be completely different than others. Who cares?
Exactly. And everybody has their own role in that community. I might not be able to do math, but I can read well. And some people struggle with maybe reading or well, they can read, but trying to figure out how to teach that can be really difficult. Can remember I had a sub that is really great with math and science. Well, they put her in an English class to sub for the day. And I was in there with her and I said, I can help you. I said, I can do with the reading. And she goes, oh, good. Because all this figurative language, I don't understand that. And I helped the kids along with that day. And then she never forgot that because whenever she would come to sub again in a science class or a math class, I'd be like, I can't help with the math or the science. She goes, it's okay. I can help with that. And, yeah. And I think it's that building that community where everybody has a role, everybody has something that they can do, everybody contributes.
Hmm. Everybody has their strength and their
Mm-hmm.
weaknesses. That's
Yep,
the world, right?
exactly.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and being part of the podcast. And again, to the audience, if what we were talking about is beneficial for you or somebody else, please share, like, and
Mm-hmm.
follow. Support us in any way you can. And if you have a story to share, reach out to me. If you have anything to share with Michelle, reach out to Michelle. Her information will be posted underneath the video. So thank you so much for coming, Michelle. It was really cool to see it from a different perspective, especially as I have no kids again, and I work from like my point of view was at the age being a kid in Germany, which is totally different from what I experience here. I don't know how it is in Germany now, but yeah, seeing that the last 20 years here with kids and with the friends, that's amazing. So good luck to you, to your writing, to your photos. Whatever you do, go shine your light, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thoughts are racing, spinning fast. Ideas flow, but never last. Waves of wonder, thoughts untamed. Nothing ever stays the same. Rambling on, no straight lines. Welcome to my busy mind. Ideas fade,